Welcome to today's explainer. So, how many times have you been told that, if you just work hard enough, you're going to succeed, right? Well, I'm thrilled to have you here because today we're basically stepping straight into the sociology classroom. We're going to analytically dissect this massive concept you've all heard of, the American dream. But look, we aren't just looking at it as some fuzzy ideal or a catchy political slogan. No, we're examining it as a real, shifting socioeconomic phenomenon. We're going to dive into the data, the structural changes, and the actual lived realities to ask a pretty pressing question. Is the American dream totally dead, or has it just kind of evolved into something completely different? Okay, let's take a quick look at our syllabus for today. First, defining the dream, then the 1970s structural shift, followed by the pillars of precarity, wealth inequality and stratification, a cohort analysis, and finally, reevaluating the dream. Let's jump right in. Section 1, defining the dream. Establishing the post-WW2 baseline. All right, to really understand where we're at today, we first need to set up our sociological baseline by taking a look backward. So out of that booming post-war economy of the 1940s and 50s came this incredibly powerful definition, the American dream, the belief that absolutely anyone, regardless of background, can achieve success through hard work, meaning every generation lives a better life than the one before it. In sociology, we call this intergenerational upward mobility. And back then, you guys, this wasn't just some hopeful wish. It was a highly observable reality. I mean, driven by a booming manufacturing sector, super strong labor unions, and government programs like the GI Bill, hard work pretty much guaranteed you could buy a house, get a car, and comfortably raise a family. College was actually affordable, and success felt systemic. If you put in your hours on the assembly line, that upward mobility was practically baked right into the economic model. But wow, how things have changed. We've moved from this normative standard of a thriving 1950s single-income family, one that could easily secure a mortgage and build a solid life, to a reality today where dual-income households are literally the baseline. And even with two incomes, simply saving money is a daily systemic struggle for so many. Today, it routinely takes two full-time salaries just to get a mortgage that a mid-century factory worker could snag on one income. It's a massive shift in purchasing power parity. We've basically transitioned from a society where one income meant true middle-class security to one where two incomes often just mean, desperately trying to keep your head above water. Section 2, the 1970s structural shift, deindustrialization and globalization. So what exactly broke this prosperous baseline? Well, if we map this out chronologically, we hit a massive structural roadblock in the 1970s. We start out with all that post-World War II middle-class growth, right? But then as we roll into the 70s and 80s, boom, we see the rapid onset of deindustrialization. Factories started shutting their doors in what we now know as the Rust Belt. And why did this happen? Mostly because corporations started looking for cheaper labor overseas. This huge wave of globalization basically wiped out millions of those stable, well-paying manufacturing jobs that had been the absolute backbone of the American middle class. We shifted abruptly from a manufacturing economy that rewarded physical labor straight into a service economy. And those sturdy single-income jobs that could support a whole family, they just slowly vanished from the system. Section 3. Pillars of precarity, modern institutional barriers. Okay, so if those foundational manufacturing jobs are gone, what does the economic landscape actually look like for the average person today? Well, we can map today's economic friction into three main pillars of precarity: the housing market, the educational system, and the healthcare sector. Each one of these represents a massive, systemic hurdle that our grandparents' generation honestly just didn't face to the same debilitating degree. Let's unpack these sociologically, one by one. Let's focus first on housing. We are currently looking at a market where home prices have completely and totally outpaced wage growth. Just to put this into perspective for you, back in 1960, the median home cost was roughly twice the median household income. Pretty reasonable, right? Today, in a lot of major metropolitan areas, a median home can cost 5, 6, or even 8 times the median income. That is a staggering ratio, and it's forced so many young adults to live with their parents well into adulthood. I mean, an entire generation raised to view homeownership as a basic rite of passage is now struggling just to make monthly rent. For huge swaths of the population, owning a home has shifted from a totally normal middle-class expectation to this distant, almost impossible luxury. Next up, we have to look at the educational pillar. In the mid-20th century, higher education was championed as the great equalizer, this highly subsidized, super accessible ticket to upward mobility. And sure, having a degree is absolutely still important statistically, but the commodification of higher education has basically turned it into a massive debt trap. The sheer institutional cost of getting a degree has skyrocketed. So now millions of Americans are graduating with a mountain of debt before they even deposit their very first paycheck. They're spending 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years just trying to pay off their student loans. And think about it, when your career starts in a financial hole that deep, building wealth and eventually buying that home we just talked about, that gets severely, systemically delayed. Finally, let's talk about the third pillar, healthcare. The United States has some of the most technologically advanced healthcare in the world, no doubt about it. But paradoxically, it's also one of the most expensive and privatized. A serious illness can literally financially devastate a family. And here is the crucial sociological observation. This holds true even if they have insurance. High deductibles and those massive out-of-pocket maximums mean that medical debt is literally a leading cause of personal bankruptcy in the US right now. These astronomical medical bills mean health emergencies aren't just physical health problems anymore. They immediately trigger profound financial crises. It just goes to show exactly how precarious the modern middle class really is. Section 4. Wealth inequality and stratification. The expanding divide. So all these institutional barriers lead us straight to our next macro-level observation, deep socioeconomic stratification. We are living in a reality of intense wealth concentration. At the very top, billionaire wealth just keeps growing, almost completely unaffected by economic downturns. But on the flip side, for the middle class, that traditional economic safety net has largely vanished. Millions of families are living strictly paycheck to paycheck, meaning they are completely vulnerable to even a tiny emergency expense, like, say, a broken-down car or a minor medical bill. This expanding divide makes it crystal clear why so many Americans feel a deep sense of systemic alienation. They feel like the economic machinery simply doesn't work equally for everyone anymore. And honestly, the data backs that up. Section 5. Cohort analysis. Generational frustration. To really wrap our heads around the societal impact of everything we've just discussed, sociologists use a tool called a cohort analysis. Basically, we take today's young adults and compare them directly with their parents when they were the exact same age. And guys, the empirical reality here is stark. Their parents' generation benefited from affordable homes, substantially lower college tuition, and really accessible, stable jobs. Contrast that with today's generation, who are facing skyrocketing rent, massive student debt, and way higher daily living costs. Just consider this crazy detail. In 1980, a student could literally pay for an entire year of public college just by working a part-time minimum wage job over the summer. Try doing that today. You'd have to work full-time all year round, and you'd probably still come up short. Because of this, many young Americans are rightly pointing out that their financial baseline is fundamentally worse than the generation that came before them. Section 6. Re-evaluating the dream. Is it dead or just evolving? As we start to wrap up our sociological inquiry today, we really have to objectively evaluate the situation. Given the deindustrialization, the crazy precarity, the inequality, is the dream totally dead? Well, no. The data shows that America absolutely still remains a land of opportunity. Every single year, new entrepreneurs find incredible success. Emerging sectors like tech and artificial intelligence, they're forging entirely new, highly lucrative paths to wealth. And millions of immigrants still arrive every year with that powerful driving hope of building a better future. But, and this is the absolute vital caveat for our class today, achieving that dream with an average income now requires exponentially more effort and sacrifice than it used to. What does exponentially more effort look like in the real world? It looks like side hustles. It means grinding in a super volatile gig economy. It means lifelong upskilling just to stay relevant in the job market. Success is no longer virtually guaranteed just because you clock in for a steady 40-hour work week. So I'm going to leave you with this final Socratic question for the class to chew on. The story of the American dream inspired the entire world, right? But shifting economic realities have severely fractured its foundation. Considering all these systemic shifts we've mapped out today, can this structural dream actually be kept alive and sustained for the next generation? And if it can, what do you think it's actually going to look like? Think about that as you review today's explainer, and I really look forward to exploring more complex topics with you next time.